Hi guys, what's up and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be reviewing Scream 3. The last installment in the Scream trilogy is set in Hollywood, where Stab 3 is being shot, with Gale Weathers and Dewey Riley on set as advisors to Jennifer Jolie. Unfortunately, a killer decides to off the cast in the order of the screenplay, and only Sidney Prescott, now in hiding until the killer tracks her down, can solve the riddle. So when I first watched all of these movies, I remember I used to always think that this movie got a lot of hate, and I still do think so, because the Rotten Tomato scores for this one are very low, and a lot of people really don't like this movie. And sure, it's not the best Scream movie, but I honestly still think it has a lot going for it, and I still always enjoy watching this one. I just finished rewatching it and I just had a blast watching it again, and I think that's the best part about each of the Scream movies. I can get some enjoyment out of all of them, and I think that's everything that you would want from a movie, especially a horror movie. I also think it's very funny that this movie tried to end it all. You could tell when you're watching the entire movie it's like ending this trilogy, and it's funny because we got Scream 4, which was fantastic, and I can't wait to talk about that one, and now we're gonna get Scream 5, which I'm really excited for, and I can't wait. Hopefully it'll be good. Hopefully it'll be as good as Scream 4 or even better. But back to this movie, I just want to start off by saying that there will be spoilers in this review, similar to how I have spoilers in my Scream 1 and Scream 2 reviews. So if you have not seen Scream 3, I highly recommend you do and just binge all of the Scream movies, because I think they're a lot of fun, especially now for Halloween, and then come back to the review. But to you guys that have seen Scream or just don't care about spoilers, come right in. So first I just want to say that I actually really do enjoy the opening scene. It's not the best opening sequence in the franchise, but I still really enjoy it. And I remember watching this, I was like, oh man, so that's it, Courteney is dead. Because you know, going into Scream, especially after seeing the first and the second, that you know the person in the beginning is just gonna not make it. And I also thought it was frightening the way Ghostface now has like voice control, can change the voice of themselves, which is just insane. And then I like what they did in the scene, because you know, Cotton's wife Christine, she didn't know whether to trust Cotton because she thought Cotton was trying to kill her because of the voice change thing.
Chris, what are you doing?
Stay back! Stay back!
And I really liked that the audience knew what was really going on, and then you were like frustrated at his wife, but you understood her because in that situation you would do the same. So I really enjoy that scene. I think it's awesome. It's not as bloody as the other ones, and that just goes for all the kills in this movie. This movie lacks a lot of violence, and there are way less kills in this movie than there are in the second and the first one. And when there are kills, they're usually off screen or you don't see anything. Like it cuts to something else and then we see the person's face all bloody, and there's not really that much blood. But I honestly understand why it was like that, because looking back, they had to change a lot about this movie, because when this movie came out there was a lot of violence going on in the country, and originally I read that they were actually going to do this movie at Woodsboro and have it have to do more with high school, but they thought after so much violence and the Columbine shooting that they would just do it in Hollywood to kind of change things up a bit. I respect them for making that change and not being oblivious and not being blind to the fact that, you know, it was a very harsh time. And then when we meet Sydney again, Neve Campbell is amazing again, and that goes for the rest of the cast. Courteney Cox is great. David Arquette is also great. They three are really good at just playing their characters, and the characters that we love still feel like themselves, and that's what I really love about this movie, because 3 movies in, and then after even in the 4th one, we still get to know that this is actually Sydney, Dewey, and Gale Weathers, and I just really love that. I also really like Sydney's house. Very random, but I do. And I also like that she isn't really introduced into the main area of the movie, in the Hollywood set, for a while in the movie. We really just get to see her in this downtime, and she's just like very traumatized by everything, and I just always felt so bad for her, and I really like the performance given, because you can really tell how much pain she's in. I mean, she's gone to 2 killings, and that's just very harsh. And then we meet Gale Weathers again, and this is like the worst, and I mean the worst thing that this movie has. It's her bangs. Did people really think this was good? I just imagine Courteney Cox getting her makeup and hair done and her looking at herself in the mirror. Like, did she actually look at herself and say, yeah, this is good, because no. And then we also get a bunch of new characters. We get characters like Jennifer, which I think she's the best part about this movie, like from the new characters. I love her. I think she's so funny, and she's acting as Gale Weathers, and I thought that that was just very funny, the performance she gave, and she always made me laugh, and it was really funny because she had a thing going on with Dewey, and then Gale was jealous, so their whole shenanigans were really great, and I enjoyed it. And then we also meet Patrick Dempsey's character, and he's a homicide detective, and for the longest time, and this is something that's like not confirmed at all, it's just my theory, but when I first watched this movie, I used to think for sure he was the killer because he kind of had that like killer vibe, and since prior movies both had two killers, I always assumed this one had two killers, and this is actually the first movie in the Scream franchise to only have one killer, and I always thought he was either the main one or one of them, and low-key sometimes to this day I still think he maybe did it and he's just hiding, because he would have been such a good killer, but that's, I mean, that's just my opinion. But yeah, I like his character. I mean, his character's just really there to be the detective and to just lay things out for us, but I thought he did a pretty good job with what he was given. Also, Stab 3 is going on, and that's basically the main location of this movie, this set in Hollywood, and this is where Scream 3 kind of is lower than the other ones for me, because I didn't really enjoy that much of the set. I could say that I think it's okay. It's not like my favorite thing in the world. I do prefer like the college campus and the Woodsboro town, but I think what they were able to do with it was pretty cool, especially how they tied it in with Maureen Prescott, Sydney's mom. But I just didn't care about the other characters, and I think that's where it like lays flat for me, because this movie had a lot of characters, and there was this whole thing of like, oh, Sydney is being played by this person and this and that, and I just didn't really care for it. And the script of the movie is also different. I mean, it's not a terrible script because I still enjoy it and there were still really good lines, but it's not written by the same person that wrote Scream 1 and 2, and I can tell at least, because the writer of the first two Screams is fantastic. He's a great screenwriter, and he didn't come back for this one, and you can tell because there were a bunch of things that are different in this one. And then this is also something that I kind of didn't really like that much, that it's not my favorite thing in the world, but they basically arrest Roman. He's, you know, later revealed to be the killer, and then Sydney's brother, which I really like that, and I'll touch more on that when I get to the killer. They kind of take him in for questioning, and he's like all crazy about it. He's like, oh, I didn't do anything, because they caught him calling the girl that was killed. And from that moment, because I always thought that he was one of the killers as well with Patrick Dempsey's character, which obviously he wasn't a killer, because it reminds me so much of to Scream 1 when that exact same thing happened to Billy. I mean, Billy was like arrested, he was just being questioned in this movie, but like I always didn't like that. It wasn't my favorite thing in the world, just because I don't know, I feel like my brain was just like, oh, that happened to Billy, and Billy ended up being Ghostface, and that's basically the same thing that I thought with this. I was like, oh, Roman is kind of going through the same thing. I was still surprised because of other elements that they were able to do with his character, but I didn't really like that because they're playing the same cards they did in Scream 1. And they kind of go back to the first Scream a lot, especially because there's a whole entire sequence, which I think is very fantastic, when Sydney sees the set and it's her house and it's the neighborhood where everything from Scream 1 happened, and they do a really good job with the editing there and the overlay of sounds, because she's in her childhood bedroom and she's remembering when Billy came through the window and they were talking about their relationship, and that entire scene that we have already seen.
You went out, did you?
About the sex stuff? No, I'm not trying to rush you at all.
Would you settle for a PG-13 relationship?
That whole sequence was amazing, and they do a lot of similar things like that because the killer is back, you know, in the same place as Scream 1, and this movie relies a lot on Scream 1 in a sense that they have a lot of parallels, and they also do something similar to Billy where he is dead and like they find him dead, and then it was kind of the same thing with Billy, like he faked his death and then, you know, they weren't actually dead. So they do a lot of similarities that I remember when I was watching it. You're doing the same thing that Scream 1 was doing. Back to being positive with this movie, I love that we got to see Randy again in a videotape. I really love that, and he's back to give us the role of the trilogies, and he was right. And I always like the little detail that the camera shows Dewey writing down notes like really fast, and I just think it's so sweet because they're finally listening to him, because he's always been right. And yeah, I just miss Randy so much in this movie. Also, oh my god, we have a Carrie Fisher cameo and I love it, and I think it's so funny the line she says, like,
I was up for Princess Leia. I was this close. So who gets it? The one who sleeps with George Lucas.
And then it just talks a lot more about Hollywood, especially with Maureen Prescott, Sydney's mom, who we find out is Rena Reynolds, and how she wanted to be an actress and she was on the same set. And we find a lot more about her mom. And then that's obviously how it connects to the killer, because we find out that Roman is actually Sydney's half-brother. And I remember I've always been shocked by that, and I really liked how they tied that in. How he wanted Sydney's life because he went back to find his mom. And again, poor Sydney had nothing to do with this. But I always liked Roman as a killer. Like, I was just talking about how I hated the things that they did with his character at the beginning and how it, you know, was a parallel to Billy, but I liked that he was a killer. And there's a scene, and I just noticed it right now rewatching it, where at the end when, like, you know, he's like about to die, right before he like stands up and Dewey shoots him a bunch of times, which I think is just hilarious. He kind of just like looks at Sydney and he kind of looks soft. And he just kind of is like looking at his sister, and I don't know, I love it. And I also really like that as he's explaining his entire life story, as all the killers always do, Sydney just kind of tells him, shut up, I've heard all of this a billion times, and I think it's funny. And just the entire third act of this movie is fantastic and definitely the best part of this movie. I love the third act of this movie so much, and it's always so action-packed and awesome. Despite some of my little negatives that I have with the movie, I still think it's great and it's an awesome watch, and I'm going to give this movie a B. I still think this is an awesome movie and I always watch this one. Thank you so much for watching my reviews, guys, and for always tuning in and watching my videos and giving me a thumbs up and commenting. Make sure to let me know what are your thoughts on Scream 3, and if you like this movie, if you don't like this movie, I would love to hear it. And make sure to subscribe to my channel if you're new here. I'm going to be reviewing Scream 4 very soon, and then after I'm going to be doing a ranking for you guys and just talking depth about my ranking, because I need to really rank them. You know, it's like hard to pick because I know my favorite, but then all the other ones, it's just very hard. So I will definitely make a video like that for you guys. And yeah, thank you guys again so much for watching, and I'll make sure to see you guys next time. Bye, guys.